Are we ready? Call Willmar City Council to order for Monday, November 18th. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Here.
Meske.
Here.
Schwantes.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Alvarado.
Here.
Osmus.
Here.
Bauman.
Here.
Nelson. Here. 9 present, 0 absent.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda as presented? Seeing and hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Next consent items, Ms. Thompson.
On tonight's consent agenda, we have for council's approval, the city council minutes of November 4th, Willmar Municipal Utilities Board minutes of November 12th, Planning Commission minutes of November 6th, to approve the project Turnabout Addition minor subdivision, the accounts payable report for October 31st through November 13th, for council's acceptance, the building report for the month of October 2019, and council's information, the Invest in Willmar Board minutes of October 9th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the consent items. Councilmember Meske.
I'd like to pull item 5B.
Okay, we're going to pull item 5B. Anything else? With the exception of item 5B, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Councilmember Meske.
Just wanted to emphasize the importance of the approval of these MUC minutes from November 5th. That does coincide or create the decommissioning of the heating system, our old coal plant. I did ask that we also include in here the work session minutes from November 5th from the MUC, where that was their item. You can look at that. That gives all the rationale. This has been on our radar screen for a very long time, but it does outline the extensive mechanical considerations for the degradation of the current plant system, including winter freeze of cooling towers, deferred power plant repairs, turbine overhaul, etc. Also addresses some of those staffing concerns and some of those expenses of upgrading that system as it is getting very aged. And so, again, with the approval of those, that would decommission that. However, the future of the building is not yet known. They are talking about that as well. So it is the decommissioning of the coal power plant. So I just wanted to point that out. I know that the MUC president and vice president are here this evening if there were any additional questions, but I think most of them are answered within those minutes. And with that, I would move to approve the Municipal Utility Board minutes of November 12th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the Municipal Utilities Board minutes. Any discussion items or any questions for Councilor Meske? Councilor Meske, maybe if you could just share a little bit how that may impact the district heat piece?
Well, I'm not going to be able to give you a specific example or dollar amounts, but if these repairs were to be done, I can't even begin to tell you what the price tag would be to continue district heat. It would be unaffordable. But most of those clients that were on that are slowly peeling off. We have that portable unit that is functioning currently, and it should be emphasized, I know there was some concern or some people may not understand how it works, but that power plant we have does not go onto the grid and service the electrical needs of the city of Willmar. It is strictly for keeping and maintaining that district heat, and most of those customers are aware that they're coming off and have peeled off already. So it's not worth the effort to continue moving it with those costs that would be to put into it. So it is the time.
Yeah, I think my question was more about what are we doing to make sure the district heat stays on until July 1st?
Oh.
And you mentioned there that we have the portable power there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Then that's not going to go anywhere. I don't know if either of our guests here this evening, if you want to address that, because you're probably more knowledgeable of the cost of that, but we are scheduled to come off of that. There is a deadline date. All of the customers that are currently on the system know that date, and most have been planning accordingly. But yeah, The decommissioning though, doesn't mean we're stopping that immediately. The district heating will continue and the date,
June
July
30th,
1st.
2020.
that's when it is. And so it's not off until then,
Sure.
but we are supplying, we're continuing the obligation that we told our customers until that date.
And that's all I wanted to get out there, is that we're not changing anything from what we've told the customers.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything's staying exactly the same. We have a portable unit in to make sure that that stays up, so.
Yes, that's
Or people that may be concerned of, if you're going to decommission this, what is this going to look like? Actually,
No.
it'll be business as normal. You won't see any change. So, thank you. There's a motion and a second to approve the Municipal Utilities Board minutes of November 12th, and also included in that is the work session on November 3rd, did you say? November.
No, you don't have to approve their work session minutes, but I put them in there. It's not customary, but it had all the rational explanation, so I included it just for information.
Thank you. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Next, we have our open forum, and we have Ms. Carol Lammer. Please state, come to the podium, state if you reside within the city or outside of the city, please.
Okay, Carol Lammer, do I have to give my address again? Oh, the sheriff asked for it tonight, that's, no, it wasn't for that. Anyway, I'm just here to say thank you for looking over the decommissioning, and to say thank you to you for your support in that as we start to change. Our community continues to change, and as the saying goes, if we don't embrace change, we're going backwards. And I believe our community continues to grow, and this is one of the things that we are changing, just as we saw with the hospital that changed, and this is changing so that we are continuing to grow. And a thank you publicly to the staff there. A lot of work has been going into this. It's been years.
Judy, do you have the timer going over there?
Do you have a feeling it might go on forever? I promise it won't.
Go ahead.
So when this is decommissioned,
It's not for you, I've been challenged on this in the past, and staff is supposed to do this, so I'm just reminding staff.
well, they probably know me too, that the work for the decommissioning, what do we do with that building, and even taking it down and all of that, it'll take more than a year for all of those decisions to be made and planning. And so down to the real reason for my speaking tonight is several of you know that I've done work with the downtown area, the Main Street, and that over the years, believe in historic buildings and what can be done with those. And I believe some of our good historic buildings over the years have gone away that would have been good. So I'm just putting the challenge out there to our city, to you and the folks in this city, that once a decommissioned is done, can a developer or someone be found to save that historic building? It won't come cheap, I understand that, but if it could, I just offer that challenge out there. Could we find a way, could a developer be found to save that historic building? And perhaps a nice loft called Railway Lofts would be pretty cool in our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chief, you want to just check outside the door? Okay, next we have a hearing concerning an ordinance amending brewer tap room licenses and new section to the brew pub licenses. I'll open that public meeting at this time. Ms. Thompson?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, tonight we will have a hearing to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 3 Alcoholic Beverages, Article 3, Section 3-137, brewer taproom licenses, and adopting a new Section 3-138 brew pub license. And recently, my office had received a couple inquiries about having brew pubs allowed in the city of Willmar. So we researched the issue, had our city attorney draft an ordinance, and also at that time, he mentioned that there had been some legislative changes for the brewer taproom licenses, so we incorporated the two together in this ordinance. So it is our approval, or our recommendation, that we move this forward if we don't have any objections.
Okay, so this is a public hearing. I have opened the public hearing. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this issue? Seeing and hearing none, I'll bring it to the council table and close the public hearing. Council, what are your wishes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Was been made and second to approve an ordinance amending brewer taproom licenses and a new section for brew pub licenses. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly,
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, the staff is recommending that we consider publication by summary if that was adopted. So I'd entertain a motion to publish by summary from the council.
So moved. Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the publication by summary. Councilmember Meske would like us to be reminded that it will still be on the city website and be available at City Hall if needed. I believe that is still correct. Is that true, Mr. Meske?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Indeed.
And again, just to remind the council, this takes 6 affirmative votes. Additional discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes as well. Next, we have Public Works Safety Committee report. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Public Works Safety Committee met on Wednesday, November 6th in conference room at the City Office Building. Present were members myself, Councilmember Osmus, Councilmember Nelson, and Councilmember Alvarado. We were joined by our Public Works Director, Mr. Christensen, our Police Chief, our Fire Chief, and our Administrative Assistant, Ms. Delbask. We called the meeting to order at 5:15 promptly. We did have some members of the community that were there to speak, and we opened up the floor to their concerns. The nature of their concerns were regarding an issue that's been brought to our attention, I believe, at the last meeting, a particular house or home in the Second Ward neighborhood containing some individuals that have been troublesome, and we've had some dealings with law enforcement and whatnot, and the neighbors are concerned about that particular property, and the discussion and the nature the nature of the discussion rather that we had at the table was what routes are we going to go, and just how far do we want to open up the subject with regards to our local sex offender ordinance. And those were issues and topics that we discussed at length, and we figured that it would be best if our city staff brought those questions back to our legal representation, and that was further examined in terms of options that we would possibly have. But obviously, because we were taking public comment at the time, it wasn't time to make decisions, but further gather information for the future so that it will be brought back to a future meeting. After that item, Public Works, or rather Public Safety, brought their statistics, their monthly statistics, and they should be in your notes. And I would give the council just a few moments if there are anything or any items that jump out, an opportunity to ask either Chief Felt or Chief Hansen. And with no questions, we'll move on to our next item, and that was regarding a private archery range, and this resulted in a motion. Background of this, Willmar City Ordinance number 10-55C3 covers a process for authorization of private archery ranges within city limits. A permit was received, a permit request rather, was received by a homeowner at 2900 15th Street Southwest, outlining approved option number 2, which is a safe buffer zone. The permit has been reviewed and is consistent with city ordinance that was previously written and accepted by council. The recommendation by the city staff, including the Willmar Police Department, is for approval of the private archery range, and I will enter that motion now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve private archery range permit application submitted by a homeowner and reviewed by staff. Discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item that we had on our agenda was the ADA Transition Plan Professional Services Contract. The ADA Transition Plan is needed for the city's numerous pedestrian ramps, sidewalks and trails, crosswalks, and traffic signals. A proposal has been submitted by Bolton and Mink to complete this plan. And by the way, this is a long-term capital improvements plan that's needs to be planned out well in advance of execution. But the professional services in front are necessary in order to complete that plan when the time comes. The services include performing a self-evaluation of the city's policies, practices, and programs to identify ADA deficiencies, as well as completing an ADA transition plan to document those findings and provide a plan and schedule to bring pedestrian facilities into compliance. We received a transition plan bid for the ADA compliance plan in the amount of $62,206 by the firm of Bolton and Mink Incorporated. And we are advising that we go ahead and authorize this contract, and I will enter that motion now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve a resolution in support for professional services with Bolton and Mink in the amount of $62,206. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had no further business that evening. The meeting was adjourned at 6:35, and I would move to file the minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to file the minutes. Discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Finance Committee report for November 7th, Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. The Finance Committee full council meeting was held on Thursday, November 7th at 5:15 at the City Office Building. Present were council members Nelson, Fagerly, Plowman, and Osmus. In addition to that, Councilmember Alvarado, Councilmember Schwantes, Councilmember Meske, Councilmember Davis, and Finance Director Mr. Okens, Police Chief Felt, and Fire Chief Hansen. There were no public comments, and we did have one item that requires action, and that is a senior citizen assessment deferment. Willmar Municipal Code, Chapter 5, Article 5, Special Assessments, and City's Comprehensive Assessment Policy offer the option to defer special assessments to senior citizens, disabled, or active military deferrals, meeting certain income requirements. At the last council meeting, 4 parcels were deferred under this policy. Since then, the city received an additional qualifying application for the 2019 street and other improvements project, and staff is recommending the deferment to be approved for parcel number 953400130 in the amount of $3,825. It was moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution deferring special assessments for senior citizens, disabled, and active military, and I will enter that motion now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve a deferment for 2019 special assessments. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. The rest of our meeting were discussion items for the council. The mayor's 2020 proposed budget was discussed, and at the request, as requested at the last Finance Committee meeting, Chief Felt was present to provide information regarding the police search robot that is currently on the 2019 budget. It is also being proposed for 2020. The robot would be used for high-risk situations, such as bomb squad calls or search warrant executions. Using a robot would reduce the risk of harm to officers. After doing further research recently, it was discovered that a refurbished model could possibly be purchased for around $10,000. It was the consensus of the committee that Chief felt could pursue the purchase of the robot now, since it is in the 2019 CIP budget, and consequently, it would no longer be needed on the 2020 proposed budget. Chief Hansen then spoke to the committee regarding the fire department turnout gear dryer proposed for purchase in 2020 at a cost of $11,000. He reported that a grant submitted for this purchase was recently been approved, which would result in the net cost of the city about $2,600 in matching grant funds. This expenditure would be incurred in 2019 as an operating expenditure in small tools. Consequently, this item can also be removed from the 2020 budget. A formal request for approval will be taken to a future council meeting. The rest of the items I am going to just summarize. We reviewed a summary of the civic requests received that was provided for discussion. We also discussed the $4 utility fee, and we were advised that there should be no changes to this process for the year 2020. It was previously noted that plans are to fully spend the balance in the Public Works Reserve Fund for 2020. That would be for servicing water and the sewer portions of the debt for street projects. The 2020 Street Improvement Program information was presented to the Public Works Committee. That was distributed to the Finance Committee along with further detail breaking out various costs, including water and sewer. We also, staff also indicated they had sent Centerpoint Energy a list of regional centers and cities that the city of Willmar uses to review tax rates. Also, the 2020 Capital Improvement Program was discussed, along with the items that we had talked about previously. Staff is working on compiling the needed adjustments for insurance and salaries portion of the 2020 proposed budget, and will provide this information to council members once available. Future meetings also will include working through staff requests and other items. Councilmember Schwantes noted that she will not be able to attend the November 21st meeting, and there was no other business to come before the committee, and we adjourned at 7:05. And I will enter a motion to approve the minutes now.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the Finance Committee agenda and minutes. Discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Next, we have the Community Development Committee report for November 12th. Councilmember Fairley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We met Monday, November 12th at 5:15 at City Hall. Present was myself, Councilmember Davis, Muskie, and Osmus. Others present was Dr. Ramstad, Director of Planning, Sarah Swedberg, Planner, and our newest employee, Lynn Schultes, our permit tech clerk. Item 2 was public comment. There was no one there to speak to us. And item 3 is an agreement between the City of Willmar and Mid-Minnesota Development Commission for creation of the city's new comprehensive plan. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to call on Dr. Ramstad to give his update on it.
Thank you, Councilmember Fagerly. Honorable Mayor, council members. Staff is seeking council adoption of the resolution to approve the city entering an agreement with Mid-Minnesota Development Commission to help the Planning and Development Department create Willmar's new comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan establishes a 20-year guideline for the timing and sequence of the adoption of official guidelines and controls and ensure the planned, orderly, and staged development and redevelopment across the city of Willmar. An update to the comp plan should happen about every 10 years. Our last comp plan was prepared in 2009 and was also contracted with Mid-Minnesota. We have Matt Johnson here from Mid-Minnesota with us today. And they were also the team that helped develop the last comp plan. So we'd like to use them again. The new agreement with Mid-Minnesota is split into 2 phases. The first phase consists of collecting and analyzing data that'll be translated into maps, tables, and diagrams. This information shall be the initial basis from which to begin phase 2 by providing the yet-to-be-formed comp plan task force, the planning commission, subcommittees, and stakeholders, a starting point from which to launch their efforts to develop the new objectives, zoning, and ordinances that will form and shape Willmar's new comprehensive plan. After phase 1, staff will return to council to request the formation of a comp plan task force, which will then take charge of the draft documents developed in phase 1 for their own use and pursuits. And with staff assistance, will organize any public participation, events, meetings, and hearings so that we get community involvement in the development of the city's comprehensive plan. So what will this cost? Phase 1, which is the data collection and documentation, will cost $13,600 and will last approximately 4 to 6 months. Phase 2, which is the comp plan development through the yet-to-be-formed comp plan task force, will cost $18,700 and is estimated to take about 12 to 18 months. Altogether, the cost is a not to exceed $32,300, which will be entirely covered by the department's permit fees. And the reason why we have the ability to do this is within the first quarter, our building official did not have state designation, and that was not part of the budget. He received state designation, and we have these funds that we can use for the comp plan. With that, I'll open it up to any questions for myself or for Matt.
Is there any questions for Mr. Ramsdale?
Thank you, Councilmember Fagerly. I'm just wondering about, Willmar has a history of being a bowl in water and, those issues. Is that addressed on with item number 41, the 2040 land use category, or how is that addressed, or am I out of the parameters of this thing?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, the comp plan will touch on flooding, water tables, wetlands, all those things will be addressed in that section. Yet to be investigated, there'd be a whole data mining and analysis of the existing conditions. And that's what we hope to give the basis to the task force, so that they're not starting from cold. They actually have some information to work with from the beginning. And that would we haven't selected which maps and diagrams we're going to do yet, but that might be one of the initial ones that we would do, or want to do maybe half of them, of the 50 listed, to get things rolling.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Welcome, Matt.
Matt Johnson from the Mid-Minnesota Development Commission. I just want to add to that, if the solution was easy for the city of Willmar, it would have been done a long time ago. I've helped the county and the surrounding watersheds do watershed different plans, and one of my frustrations is we're very good at studying the issue, we're very poor on following through with an implementation. And so the philosophy is changing a little bit on that. So in the comp plan, our role would be to identify the problem and then the implementation steps. And if the city council wants to follow those implementation steps to go after engineering studies or grant money to help relieve some of those issues, that would be the procedure laid out in the comp plan. It's a very challenging issue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on that same note. One of the things that we are planning on doing to make this an actionable document, so it doesn't become a paperweight or just another bookshelf item, is we want to incorporate ordinances that will actually make the comp plan part of the department's and city's daily routine. So as we develop this, we want to start developing policies that'll be incorporated into it, and then at the very end, bring those to the council section by section so that we can modify and shape them further.
All right. So it won't be just the city using this plan. New entities that want to come into Willmar will have access to this,
Absolutely.
and they can
Absolutely.
check out all that data. Okay. And then when phase 1 is done, and you need a task force, you'll be coming back to the council, and then the mayor will be creating.
Correct. That's the initial idea, is that we've actually created a document based on a brief conversation that the mayor and I had in City Hall with trying to create an unabridged list of potential candidates that could be on this task force. And the idea is that there might be 12, so that the task force can be split up into maybe 4 subcommittees of 3s, so that they can break this project down into manageable chunks. And that will be submitted to the mayor for his review and decision-making.
All right. So there was a motion made and seconded to approve an agreement with Mid-Minnesota Development Commission not to exceed $32,300. So I'll introduce that. Fernando.
I have a question. Addressing, we're also concerned about our historical buildings. Ms. Lammer mentioned it earlier about the power plant. We've got the auditorium. How are we factoring those in? What section?
Well, I was actually very glad to hear you bringing that up, because the planner and I have both gone through downtown, which is now our opportunity zone, and we've actually driven all the streets of the opportunity zone and selected a number of homes that we consider to be of heritage value. So we've done that, plus we've selected a number of buildings in downtown that we consider to be of heritage value, for not just for the structure, but also for the occupancies. Like restaurants, or it could be anything, but that has been around for a long, long time, and we want to preserve that place for as long as they want to be there. That structure would be an ideal one to mark as a heritage property. We want to stay away from the word historic or preservation, but we want to attach a layer, a zoning layer, that would define what these heritage properties are and what that means. Downtown, that would mean that those properties could not be torn down, they can only be renovated. For the homes out in the neighborhoods that we've kind of designated tentatively as important structures, that would probably mean a 30 to 60-day moratorium on tearing that house down and putting it up for $1, seeing if somebody could buy it and move it to a lake or to wherever they'd like to move it to. Just give that home an opportunity to live on someplace else. So those are some kind of the ideas that we're thinking about. But yes, so the answer is yes, we do want to save these buildings.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we did have a motion and a second.
I didn't hear the second.
Councilman.
So a motion and a second to approve the agreement with Mid-Minnesota Development to develop a new comprehensive plan for the city of Willmar. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Schwantes.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
8 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Councilmember Fagerly.
And item 4 was department updates. And then Sarah Swedberg, our planner, talked about the Artists on Main Street program. And she's going to present that tonight. Welcome, Sarah.
Here's we are still waiting for updates, so I will wait for the overhead camera to appear. Fabulous. Oh boy, that's a little small. Can we zoom in at all, Dave? Where's that? Probably it. Okay. Well, we will go with what we've got as best as we can.
Dave, can you zoom in, please?
Perfect. You can zoom in on half of one. Yeah.
Maybe move it
that's
to your
good.
left a little bit.
Perfect. There we go. That's good.
Thank you.
Oh, don't move it. All right. Mayor, members of the council, we thought it would be a good opportunity as we've wrapped up all of our Artists on Main Street projects to come back and just recap everything that has has been going on downtown this past summer. So a quick reminder, our project was called Gather Juntar Escuimata, and our challenge was all about creating gathering spaces, more everyday gathering spaces downtown. So we acknowledge that we've got lots of fantastic events that happen downtown that draw thousands of people, but we want to create that energy and excitement around downtown in a more everyday fashion. And our artists fully embraced that. As an overview of the project as a whole, we're one of 11 communities that will be selected over 4 years. The next 4 will be announced shortly, I believe. I did have the honor of sitting in on that panel as to the next 4, so that was a fun endeavor. We had 39 more applications for other cities, so it was fabulous to see the interest that we have gained with this cohort that we've been a part of. And so we've got these 7 communities that we've been working with this past year. We form these community cohorts. We've got project funds funded through the Bush Foundation, and Rethos and Springboard for the Arts are the 2 main organizations that are kind of heading the actual programming and coordination with these communities. And ultimately, it's embedded artist-led problem solving. The structure of our year, we first created the challenge, which I mentioned at the beginning. What's your vision for the community? Where are your gaps? Calling for creatives. Then we train. We hold a creative placemaking workshop, and I'll talk about that in just a second, where we're sparking interest for the program. We have a small committee connected with artists on Main Street and Willmar Main Street that work to approve and look through all of the applications we received. We did receive 15, and we funded 13 of those 15. The goal is to fund as many as possible. And then we implement. So then it's the creative's time to shine. We create awareness, support, documentation for that implementation. And now we're in that recap stage. We have had a couple of videographers that created a business through KCEO who have been following us throughout the past summer to create kind of a recap video. We've been doing some thank yous and impact stories, coming back to the council, and ultimately we'll talk about at the end. We've got a kind of an open house for the public also planned to kind of do a meet and greet with some of the artists and start talking about our challenge for next year. So as I mentioned, we created that challenge, creating more visible, frequent, everyday gathering spaces that are conducive to and celebrate a variety of ages, cultures, and backgrounds in downtown. Then we held those trainings. We had 30 participants throughout our 2 different trainings on a Saturday in March, which was fantastic to see. We held one at the Barn Theater and one at the African Development Center. During that training, I wanted to throw in, because I think it's important to just for everyone to have a base of what creative placemaking is. It tends to be a buzzword. And as Rethos and Springboard like to describe it, placemaking is the act of people coming together to change overlooked and undervalued public and shared spaces into welcoming places where communities gather, support one another, and thrive. Places can be animated and enhanced by elements that encourage human interaction, from temporary activities such as performances and chalked poetry to permanent installations such as landscaping and unique art. And there's a couple simple pictures there to show you some examples, whether it's a parade or a farmer being creative with his hay bales, or even Christmas lights, like we will see at Celebrate the Lights out at Robbins Island soon. Core principles for this program that actually largely align with a lot of Springboard's core principles include defining artists broadly, working with local artists, working from existing assets, collaborating across sectors, giving people a common cause, providing simple mechanisms, small and many projects that are attainable and easily taken on within the time that we've allowed, building lasting relationships, and most importantly, paying artists. And then the part we are all here for, implementing and watching all of this come to life. In no particular order, The first project that we're highlighting is Amazing Masks, Faces of Willmar, and this was done by Nikki Betcher Erickson. She put on a 3-part mask making series. It was co-hosted by Community Education, so it was in their pamphlet that went out for winter activities. She saw a fabulous variety of people from ages 3 to 70 that participated in that event in the basement of the Barn Theater. So it was fantastic to see all of them working side by side. Kristen Allen and PFF worked out at Robbins Island during Rockin' Robbins. They were out there at every session. They had 2 different murals each time, painting. It was a paint by number community mural project. And so the part that we funded was just a small portion of those 8 murals, all of which you will see downtown, hopefully in the near future, perhaps in the spring once it gets warm enough to adhere these to the buildings. But what we loved about this project especially was the ability for these murals to be brought to the community rather than expecting community members to show up at a specific place at a specific time to participate. Having this located out where there's a critical mass of people was awesome, and some of this work is actually inspiring perhaps some restoration of a couple pieces at Robbins Island in some of the painting that needs to be done there. So we're kind of excited about the energy that one has sparked. Trace, we threw in the picture there of one of our community service officers gladly partaking during our Touch a Truck event that we had earlier this fall. The Trace was put together by Andrew Nordine and Lisa Berg, both of New London, and they have a traveling art museum, which is essentially a fish house that they have converted into this fantastic little traveling space for them to showcase art. And it typically has installations, but this time they plastered the walls in whiteboards and invited community members of all ages to come in and join them during different pop-up events. So they were located during our Touch a Truck event and a couple other things that were already going on this summer. The high school art club partook in one of the projects. They titled their project Living Decay, which is a very fun play on what their project was. So they drew inspiration from buildings that were downtown and enhanced some of the different elements of those buildings that they found. So this happens to be on the corner of the Engen building. As you're walking down 4th Street, if you take a stroll, you might stumble upon it. And we liked that ability for those that stumbled upon these to have to be walking downtown. So it was just a fun addition to that landscape. Willmar, What Comes to Your Mind, was a photography exhibit that John Salgado Maldonado put on. He wanted to focus on diversity, and the conversation that he wanted to draw out of his photos, you can't see them in this picture very well, but on the left, he starts with photography of all sorts of variety in objects that he finds. So tomatoes in the grocery store, at the farmer's market, or apples, or all sorts of modes of transportation that we have, and all of that diversity that we greatly appreciate. And this conversation that he led about how that doesn't always translate to people. And the interesting kind of intellectual conversation that he drew out of that. This artist is from Chile, and he has lived in Willmar for about 2 to 3 years. And it was really fun to watch him get to intimately know downtown as he was taking some of those pictures, and the excitement that he really cherished and grew out of some of that project. He also created a website alongside this photography exhibit, and he had people from 3 different continents that happened to visit that website and kind of think through some of his project with that, so it was fun to watch. Tammy Knick and the Dream Technical Academy put on the pop-up art shop, and they played with some new equipment. Some of their students created a new logo, and they learned this new art form that they will continue to use, and created this just very fun space at other events happening. So this was at Willmar Fests this summer, and they just created this accessible place for people to partake in events free of charge, and gave their students the ability to learn this new cricket machine. Heritage Day was one of our first Artists on Main Street projects that happened way back in May, which feels like forever ago now. But Los Lobos Norteños is a local band that's won the equivalent of essentially Latin Grammys that lives in our backyard. And so it was fun to give them the space and ability to play at Spurs. They drew quite the crowd. And all of those people would never have been downtown that day if this event hadn't been going on. So it was fun to see so many faces that gathered around that project. Monica Villers created the Welcome Bubble Station, and she created quite the buzz on social media. The particular picture I included was actually of Springboard for the Arts. Their kind of executive team, decided to meet in Willmar one day and said, hey, come bring us around to some of these projects you've got going on. And they just fell in love with the bubbles, as I think anyone who stumbled upon it did. Another one of our first projects was the Mother's Day mural by Andres Cabrera, and he painted a Mother's Day mural on Spurs windows as well, and made sure that it was up before that Heritage Day took place, which was fun to get that much attention for his mural. We like the connection between the story behind Spurs and one of the co-owners who really kind of created the idea for the restaurant because of her love of cooking with her daughter and having this Mother's Day mural on their windows. Fardosa Ibrahim, director of IFTIN in town, one of the Healthy Together Willmar funded projects that continues to this day, created a Willmar youth experience at the Barn Theater, and that took place just earlier this month. She has a dance troupe that she's been working with, so the dance troupe performed. She had some storytelling components, some henna components, a really great food component, if I do say so myself. And then she also put together a play that addressed addiction, it tends to be a taboo topic in Somali homes as well as just a difficult topic to talk about. And she created this play that kind of led into discussion with the audience about substance abuse and how we talk about it on a more normal, everyday basis. There were kids and community health workers and adults in the room, and it was really great to hear a lot of that discussion. Sewing Together was a project put on by Doris Codulo and Diane Anderson. And my favorite thing about this project is seeing women from the First Presbyterian Church bring in anyone who is interested in learning how to sew into the basement, and not just learn how to sew, but grow relationships together, to the point where you see them out and about eating ice cream together and finding new apartments for one another and all sorts of different things that would never have happened should this project not have been funded. The Porch Sing-Along and Community Picnic was really a handoff from one project to another, as I like to call it. Kashimana Hua was a composer in residence this past year through the American Composers Forum, and she put together the In Common project. If any of you are familiar with that work, she put together a community songbook and poetry book that was written by community members. So she was at the elementary schools and at the Goodness Coffee Shop and all over town a couple times a month, I think it was, for a year putting this book together. And this was really a culmination of the community that had helped create some of that, said we want to celebrate this, and put together this porch sing-along for that book that was put together, and held a community picnic and drum circle and lots of fun components. It really was a fun neighborhood event. It happened at the Unitarian Church on the corner downtown, just down from the Phoenix apartments. And it was fun to watch a lot of those residents come out and check out all the music that was going on and just have this very neighborhood feeling event happen one July afternoon. And last but not least, we had the Litchfield Flower Space, which was put together by Ben Larson and Kevin Tuttle. And one of my favorite memories of this project is sitting down with the videographers, asking Kevin some questions about his inspiration behind his project. And Ben really talked about how Kevin likes to create spaces wherever he is, whether it's his room or at his office or wherever it might be. And it was so fun to see the connection that his staff made with this project in in our goal to create spaces downtown and to create these gathering spaces. And so that's exactly what Kevin did. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we have an opportunity coming up on Saturday, December 7th, from 4:30 to 6:30 in the City Auditorium. We have invited as many of the artists as are able to attend to bring components of their projects and come share what they have learned. We'll be kicking off the recap video. It'll be about 5 minutes long. So you'll be able to kind of watch that documentation of the projects over the years or over the months in the summer, and we'll be kicking off our conversation about what 2020 should look like. We were able to inject $15,000 directly to these artists, which is a fantastic opportunity to share all through this grant that we received, and we have additional money for next year.
So with that, it was for information only, but thank you very much, Sarah, for enlightening us. I did ask Dr. Ramstad at the meeting if Sarah is keeping up with her regular job, and she is, and she's having fun with this position too, because originally on the application, we're supposed to have a full-time person for Main Street, and Sarah's doing an excellent job, so I want to thank her for that. So if there's any questions for Sarah? Oh, Vicki?
I just want to say thank you, Sarah. And I know she put in way more time than her job required. I saw her evenings and Saturdays working very hard on this. So thank you.
And Councilperson Davis is the liaison for the Main Street group too, so thank you for that. Andrew?
Thank you. I just also want to publicly acknowledge the amount of work and time and effort that you're putting into these initiatives. Other people have actually emailed me and Facebook messaged me and whatnot about this. Just the fact that we are a community going on, well, now we have census coming up, but we know 20,000 plus. But it's stuff like this that makes us feel smaller and more of a community. And it's not this huge amount of money and all this stuff that's required by government, but it's actually all these resources that are pulled together, and you're an integral part of pulling it all together, and people are noticing that. And I think it's really cool. Like I said, a city of our size having that smaller hometown feel being brought back to it. So kudos.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
I also want to thank you, Sarah, for the work that you do. I was looking at some of the pictures, and Councilmember Fagerly said, "Mr. Mayor, is that you?" And I said, "No, that one's not me." So, but I was at a number of these events. I think I was at over half of them. So, and I do appreciate that. But I want to take it a little bit more closer to home today, in that I attended a meeting today down at public television down in Granite Falls, and there was a group of the Upper and Lower Sioux community there, and I know that population is just outside of our catchment area, because the catchment area is 35 miles. And so if there's a way that we could look at trying to incorporate some of the Upper and Lower Sioux communities into maybe some of our future projects, because they bring a tremendous wealth, particularly in the arts piece. And so I had an opportunity to meet with some of the leaders there today and just talk about some things that are happening down there, and they're doing some really, really super exciting things. And I knew this was on the agenda today, so I wanted to, number one, thank you, but also if we can even be more inclusive. I know some of that is outside of the realm, but maybe if we can ask for an exception to just, because that community is so close to us.
Yeah.
And really, we need to hear their voice, because their voice has been stifled for years and years. And it's now our time to embrace that part of our heritage. And so I would just challenge you to try to incorporate that as well. But again, kudos for a job very, very well done. And I agree with Councilmember Plowman and the smiles and the giggling and the happiness that was happening. And the one particular one that really touched me closely was the sewing project. And just seeing those relationships, it was unbelievable to just see that connectedness that happened. And that doesn't happen without being intentional. So thank you for being intentional and making our community better.
So if there's no further questions, I move to file the minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to file the minutes for the Community Development Committee report for November 12th. All Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Next, we have Labor Relations Committee report for November 12th as well. Councilmember Metzke.
Yes, indeed. We did meet on November 12th. In attendance was myself, council members Alvarado, Davis, and Osmus. Thank you, Ms. Osmus, for subbing in. It was very helpful. Also present was HR Director Beckman. We didn't have any public comment, and most of ours was looking at, again, personnel policy changes. The next piece was section 11, and I told you in error last time that that was the last section. That would be the last section that would be correlating with what League has written down, but we did find apparently a bunch of additional policies that we're going to call miscellaneous that will be coming next time. So I stand corrected. We will have one more go at some of these in the next meeting. But we did do the next section, which is section 11. You would have had, and I apologize that the first pieces of these policies, the color did not show up so good, but it included the drug-free workplace, city driving policy, and the city driving policy will just reference the full policy as a change that's on there, which is included. Cellular phone use, safety, which includes safety equipment and gear. Under that, you can make out maybe that the type is gray, but it's talking about if you have safety glasses or boots, that there is some reimbursement piece that's always been there, but it is now included right there. The next portion, the city driving policy, the color does come through very nicely. So you can see there's not a lot of changes there, just adding that federal laws also must be obeyed in addition to state and local laws. Under the safety equipment policy, the full policy, it does talk about if the employee's job requires safety glasses or boots, that the city will provide and reimburse some of the costs of that. Most cost for boots is $175. That was unchanged from a change in 2015. We did include in your packet, this is not part of the policy, but we did include in there some of the language from some of the contractual pieces about clothing. I know there was some discussions about that during last contract sequencing and discussion, so I thought I'd include it because we did talk about that a little bit. So that's information that you may find useful next time we do contract negotiations, but definitely not part of this particular policy section. That is the main set parts of the section. Wasn't a lot of changes, but if you have any questions, we can address them at this time. Hearing none, the committee did move the approval of section 11, and I would offer that motion at this time.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve section 11 of the personnel policy. Discussion. Seeing and hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion does carry. Councilmember Metzke.
The next part that we'll be addressing, those miscellaneous policies, will come before you next time, but you'll see they don't really fit anywhere nicely. So you have a piece on nepotism, a conflict of interests, deferred comp. There's a lot of different pieces that don't fit really nicely somewhere. We are getting some additional information on gift giving and receiving. There was some confusions on some of that. We needed some information. We even looked at gifts giving and receiving amongst not only employees, but also we did dabble a little bit in looking at it as far as elected people are concerned as well. So we even were looking at some state law, but we will get all of that hammered out for you at a future meeting. That future meeting, if you take a look there, we do not have one on the 25th. Our next meeting, I'll announce it at this time, will be December 9th at 5:15. Again, that is December 9th at 5:15. Before I talk about the minutes and move to file those, we also, remember last time, did add an update about where we are as far as the city administrator search is concerned. I will add that everybody should have received, shortly after that last meeting, a questionnaire asking you about the position and what you thought about different pieces. I'm assuming those have been tabulated, but in addition, you were given a handout about the meeting schedule with Patty Hemanover from Baker Tilly over the next couple of days to give you updates on that process. I think everybody is represented on here, so please attend your meeting and ask all your questions and get all the information that you need. There was no other business that was in our meeting, so I would move to file the minutes from the Labor Relations meeting of November 12th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to file the minutes as presented. Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Next, we have a resolution opposing the petition for detachment. There you are. Ms. Swedberg.
All right. Mayor, members of the council, tonight we have a petition before us for detachment. This is something the city has not seen, so if you're asking yourself what in the world is detachment, that's okay. Detachment is the exact opposite of annexation. So this petition is requesting for the property proposed to be taken out of city limits. Planning Commission reviewed this item on November 6th at their meeting. They had reviewed it one meeting before as well, just as a preliminary discussion. And it would be staff and Planning Commission recommendation to adopt a resolution opposing the petition for detachment. Largely, the petition discusses the reasoning for this petition being the ability to hunt on the property. A quick recap, this isn't the same piece of property that we reviewed a rezoning application on that was ultimately denied. It's just southeast of that property, east and southeast, across the abandoned rail spur that's in this area. The comprehensive plan calls for this rail spur to be abandoned and connected with the Glacial Ridge Trail, though to this point that has not happened. However, the Planning Commission is still recommending opposition of this detachment. This is the property that was annexed in 2007 for the pelletizing plant that never came to fruition.
Discussion? Councilmember Palmer.
So just long story short, it was asked to be included into city limits. It was brought into city limits, and now we're being petitioned to remove it from city limits.
Correct, by two different property owners. So the original annexation happened
Okay.
11, 12 years ago.
That was going to be my next question. Is it the same owner?
No. This particular owner, I think we looked, has owned the property for about a year or so.
And what's the primary reasoning behind wanting to keep it within city limits?
Essentially because the comprehensive plan includes it within city limits, but also to go through the process of detachment and then to go backwards again in the future of annexation. It would be Planning Commission's recommendation to oppose that detachment. There's not, essentially, they don't, how do I put this? The detachment petition kind of underlying desire for hunting on the property is not enough of a request, although it is ag land, for the Planning Commission to recommend approval of such a request.
I'll make a motion to deny the detachment.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to deny the detachment from the petitioner. Additional conversations. Councilmember Alvarado.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concern is that we have a school down the road. We have some high visible projects or businesses around. I would be very leery to open it up to something like that. I think it's a good recommendation from the Planning Commission. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Plowman.
I apologize, I didn't ask this before. Okay, so how about then, I mean, has it even been discussed the topic regarding the property directly south, because the property directly south appears to not be in city limits, is that correct?
Correct.
Are there any thoughts with regard to, I suppose that property would be addressed possibly in the next comprehensive plan?
Yeah,
stage?
yeah. The current comprehensive plan does talk about this area kind of as a whole. And we discussed that a little bit last time with the rezoning request. Utilities, because due to topography in this area, do create an interesting challenge, but not something that is worthy of us detaching all of this land until we necessarily have the exact answer. There are plenty of options and great opportunity for a larger scale development to take advantage of this land that is within the city currently. And if we were to take it out of the city limits, we would eliminate that ability. We'd have to go through that annexation process again. And thankfully, we have a very agreeable township, Willmar Township, in annexation processes when we do have particular projects. But it's been annexed at this point, and we feel that it should stay that way.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I just wanted to add a little details on the process, given that this is a unique request. Detachments are governed by state statute, the same chapter that covers annexations, any kind of municipal boundary adjustment. Detachments can be petitioned for by any property owner who owns property that is on the city boundary but within the city, and this one qualifies. The procedure is that a property owner files a petition, and then if the municipality, so the city in this case, were to file a resolution in support of the petition, and the township also has an opportunity to weigh in, and the township didn't oppose it, the detachment would automatically be granted by the state. In this case, if the city follows the Planning Commission's recommendation and opposes the detachment, the likely outcome would be if the property owner wants to pursue it, it would go to a hearing before an administrative law judge in the Office of Administrative Hearings. Before that would ever happen, there's a requirement that the parties mediate, because many times cities and property owners can reach some understanding or agreement that would make the hearing unnecessary, and that would be the hope here. Perhaps even the city could work something out before going to formal mediation. But essentially, by passing a resolution opposing the detachment, the city would be preventing the detachment from being automatically granted by the state and preserving the city's right to go to a hearing and argue that the property should not be detached. The standard ultimately in that hearing would be if the property is rural in character and not developed for any urban purpose, and that the property is not reasonably needed for future development. In this case, just the history on this parcel indicates it is experiencing some development pressures as it was brought into the city for a development project, even though that project was never completed. So there does appear, just at a surface level, to be an opportunity for the city to argue that the detachment should not be granted. But again, the hope would be this matter could be resolved without having to go to a hearing, and whatever the true motivations for this petition are could be addressed by the city, but we will have to see.
Additional discussion. So Attorney Scott, I have a follow-up question to what you just said. So this appears to be a conflict in hunting rights. And in talking with Ms. Swedberg last week, it appeared that based on our ordinance, which does not allow hunting within the municipality, which causes this to rise to the detachment request. Is there a way that the council would have the authority to grant permission to the police chief to grant hunting on a particular spot within the community? I'm hearing Council Member Alvarado opposed to that, but I'm just wondering, I believe that you stated you were opposed to it.
Correct.
But I mean, is there an option in part of that mediation piece before we end up spending a lot of money in legal fees? I mean, is that something the council could consider?
Mayor, members of the council, yes, it is. Cities do have the authority to allow hunting under certain circumstances that they define. I know the city has not chosen to do that, but it is an option available to the council.
Okay. And then I have another question, and I don't know if this is for Dr. Ramstead or Ms. Swedberg. But my understanding is we have a process for bringing land in, but we really, it's kind of a strange process to take land out. So in order to bring land in, you have to pay. And you have to pay us a fee. And then we do our due diligence and we do our work. And then we make a recommendation. On this particular item, one of the first questions I asked Ms. Swedberg when I asked her about this was, what did they have to pay for this? And my understanding is there's no fee. So I believe that as council, either staff or council need to provide direction that, it shouldn't be free to take land away from us. We should have a process because, we've invested sizable amount of staff time. And I'm assuming anyways, I don't know that for a fact, but I'm making an assumption. And probably some legal costs have been incurred. And so there should be a fee associated with that. So council, when we take this action, just understand that maybe there are some follow-up actions, maybe that community development needs to look at, and maybe that can come from our staff. But it's all paramount to the question, and that's the reason I'm bringing it up at this time, is that I think we need to look at some of these other issues rather than just say, we don't want to. And I think our rationale is very genuine. And I know there's another property or another developer that was looking at and had cursory conversations with me in regards to that property within the last 2 years. But they couldn't get the rail line put back in, so then that became an obstacle. But anyways, so I guess that's my comments. I think there were comments, not opinions, so I kept the gavel. Is that all right?
It's fine.
Okay. Councilmember Osmus, followed by Maskey.
Thank you. Is there tax implications that we're not discussing here that come into play, whether it's in the city limits or if it goes into the county?
If it's detached, it becomes outside of city limits. In 2009, I did have in there, it's about 69.01 acres, and they paid about $430.08 for taxes in 2015. So we would, that land would be outside of our jurisdiction, and therefore that would be taxed by the township instead of the city if it was detached. And then you would lose that ability for future development to raise property values out in that area and all of that. That kind of falls in line with that as well.
Councilor Maskey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually going to ask questions about process in and out, so I'm glad that you did. So if you're looking for a council member to back up what you said, I would absolutely concur with whatever this does for a vote, that we reevaluate what coming out means, because all the time and effort that goes into bringing things in, we should recoup some of those costs if it's going out. And a parcel that's been brought in as recent as this has been brought in, we can't let that just keep going. Not that it would, but if that were to continue, that's a process of a lot of lost time and effort that we need to recoup for. I don't feel there's a really compelling reason at this time to bring it out, or frankly to keep it in. So at this point, I think we need to probably do some more homework on this, but as of now, for this evening, there's no reason to take it out at this point, but we really need to do some homework, additional work on this particular piece.
Additional discussion. Is this a simple majority?
Yes, it is.
Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus,
What do we vote on?
Just to make sure that I'm clear on the motion.
Okay, the motion is if you vote for the motion, you oppose the land being taken out. So you're opposing the detachment. So you're opposing, or you would be voting in favor of, or you'd be
Opposing.
voting against the property owner taking the property out of the city.
Yep. Aye.
Plowman,
No.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Maskey,
Aye.
Schwantes,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Alvarado.
Aye.
7 ayes, 1 nay.
That resolution passes. Thank you for your work. And Dr. Ram said, if you could put this on the to-do list, I'd appreciate it. So, thank you. Next is a memo from the mayor with an update on the 130-year celebration. I won't go through the monotony of reading it to you, but at the last meeting, I asked for permission to go out and seek support for people interested in assisting us with the 150-year celebration. And as much to my what I expected to have happened, the response was overwhelmingly, yes, we need to celebrate our successes. And so in addition to the group that you see mentioned here, I also had a conversation late this afternoon with United Way, and they also want to be at the table. And so pretty much everybody I've talked to has expressed an interest in being at the table. And Councilmember Meske had mentioned to me that I should talk to the Historical Society, thank you, and see if they would like to be at the table as well. And so I will be doing that, but I didn't have time to get that done prior to, after the memo was written prior to today, because I was in Granite Falls for meetings today. So I think this is very exciting. And again, we're looking for a meeting on December 10th would be the date of the meeting. And for those of council members that would be willing to attend that, please place it on your calendar. That meeting will be happening at City Hall. And I don't have a time yet, but just if you could put a placeholder on that if you're interested in that. If some of you have interest in time that would work better, I would like community involvement on this. So I'm thinking later in the day versus earlier in the day. So probably it may actually be after regular business hours, but just to kind of put that out there. So if anybody has any questions, I'd certainly field them at this point. Councilmember Nelson.
We have Convention and Visitors Bureau meeting tomorrow, and I would think they would fit in line with this too. I will ask that question, if that's all right.
That'd be great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes. Yes, if there's anybody else that you think should be invited to the table, please invite them. Because we want this to be a community project. So. Okay, council member announcements. Councilmember Fagerly, so I don't forget you again.
Thank you. We have community development next Monday, 5:15. And driving out to the meeting tonight, I see the park shelter at Robbins Island. Looks like it's already enclosed, so it's coming along.
Excellent. I was hoping to get out there today, but my day didn't allow that. So, Councilmember Meske.
Pass.
Councilmember Schwantes.
Pass, thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
Pass.
Councilmember Alvarado.
The 150th anniversary is a sesquicentennial. And I learned that while my daughter was attending Gus Davis Adolphus, and they celebrated their sesquicentennial. It's a mouthful. I want to emphasize that we have some fun things coming up. Saturday, November 23rd, we have the downtown holiday market and building, Chicago hot dogs at the Goodness Coffee. We got some free hot chocolate put on by Q102, inflatables, penguins at the Willmar City Auditorium, reindeer sleigh rides, a chili supper, which is excellent, at the Bethel Lutheran Church. Kids make and take crafts at the library, Willmar Public Library. Meet Santa and Mrs. Claus at the barn. Holidays Touch a Truck on 4th Street. And one thing I'd like to do someday is turkey bowling, so outside the foxhole. So take advantage of that. Get out to the Robbins Island, help with the lights. It's an exciting time, and you're going to want to be able to say, hey, I did that light, I did that tree. So get out there and participate. Thank you.
Councilmember Rasmus.
I'm good.
Councilmember Plowman.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Do you want I have no announcements other than our finance meeting is on Thursday. You did get an email late this afternoon that has the agenda on there, and it is the Finance Committee meeting with a full council invited on Thursday at 5:15.
Okay. I'm just looking over your shoulder at the agenda because I didn't have a chance to see it. Is there any chance of putting the budget discussions first so that the finance committee could deal with their business after, so that the council doesn't have to sit through everything, through the other business?
I'm sure that could be item number C that's listed on here. We would have to have the discussion first anyway, so we can work on that.
Okay. Just, I mean, we're not in work session format anymore, and I was going to talk to you about that, but I didn't. But in the past, we kind of tried to, in past years, when we used this format, we tried to have the budget stuff first so that if the council members had other things going on, they could leave early. They didn't have to sit through the whole meeting.
That's fine. We had worked to minimize, I think these were just some small items that they were trying to get through. We had one item last time, and I think there's just two this time, but we can certainly work with the adjustment of the agenda.
Yeah, however you choose to do, that's fine. Just a recommendation. Councilmember Plowman.
Since Public Works, Public Safety was the only one not mentioned thus far, I will just note we're meeting this week, Wednesday, 5:15 on the 20th.
Okay, sounds good. I think everybody else announced their committee meetings. Anything else for the good of the order? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by made, seconded, we are adjourned.